Reading, Olympus One-Offs by Engineer Forever.
Disclaimer, I don't own Naruto or Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Reading Fearless, Night's Fall, Part 2. Are we going to behave ourselves? Hestia stood in front of the two demi-children of her youngest brother, and Ares. She had excused herself and the three offspring of Zeus to her hearth outside the council chambers in order to rein in the chaos that had been unfolding inside. Getting the blood relatives to calm down was easier than reining in the bloodlust of the god of war, but Hestia was still an elder Olympian. Her power matched, sometimes even dwarfed, that of Ares. It was a fact the god knew, but not one he spoke of. Yes. The children of the late Beryl Grace mumbled. No. The god of war grumbled petulantly. Flame-like eyes leveled a challenging stare at the younger deity. Ares. Fine. He huffed, and crossed his arms. But if Jackson, Half-Pint, Sunspot or the cripple start anything, I bear no responsibility. Hestia nodded. That was the best she would get out of her violence-indulging nephew. She smiled at the three and willed them back to their seats, nodding at her youngest brother once she returned to her own. Zeus returned it with a brief nod. Then the book that had been entertaining them so much landed back in the lap of Talia Grace. Hey, what? No fair, I just read. The book opened of its own volition and pages flipped before they stopped. Electric blue eyes narrowed and static crackled across her body. No. The screen, which had been displaying scenes or images, then showed the title of the story they would encounter this time around. Fearless, Night's Fall, Part 2. Not again. Talia's left eye twitched and her fingers tightened around the book. The demigods around her snickered at her while she bared her teeth at the leather-bound hardback. Yes. Aphrodite made a slow pump of her fist as a salacious smile spread across her face. There's still hope. Apollo's watery voice crowed out. Honestly. Artemis rolled her eyes. The both of you are to blame for all that's wrong with the world. You're just mad because this might be the part where we save Lil Nephew from your schemes of chastity. Apollo huffed. His twin pursed her lips and glared at her still reveling rival. Score. Aphrodite, please do calm yourself. Hera huffed, wanting to quell any more fighting before it began. The goddess giggled and waved her off. Please, Hera, she said. As if you're not excited to see another insert into this reality. I would be if we could get on with it already. Dionysus grumbled while he cracked open another Diet Coke. For once, we agree, Dionysus. Artemis looked at her lieutenant. Talia, if you would? Do I have to? She whined. Talia. Fine. She glared at her brother's girlfriend and then at her mortal cousins. One word, just one, and I'll shock the lot of you. Just read, Talia, Annabeth giggled. The punk growled at her before she went through with her next bout of torture. Punishment. 4 for 4. Who would have thought? Hades smirked. I have a good feeling about where this one may wind up. He's gonna get abducted by Valkyries, the lucky bastard. Leo frowned. Not if I have anything to say about it. Artemis and Hades muttered, before looking at each other in shock. Learned something about you two today, Apollo chuckled weakly when their gazes fell on him. The word invokes a flicker of childish sense of fear for most who hear it. Even the gods, Apollo and Poseidon in particular, are unnerved by the term. They dish it out well, but taking it in turn is not as easy. Poseidon cleared his throat. We don't talk about these things. Much. Hades needled with a vicious smile. Ever. Apollo shivered. He was dreading the coming punishment from Zeus. Demigods, likewise, have suffered from the word. Being used as such when their death was brought on by another deity, as is the case for most half-bloods of Zeus. For example, the reason Talia Grace was changed into the pine tree was because Hades, and likely some part of Hera, wished to punish his brother for hypocritically breaking the oath they had made. It was of the hunter's opinion that no one knew what punishment was until they suffered it from Artemis. Let's see, be turned blind. Turned a cisgender male into a female. Bewitching lust unto an innocent bear. Eaten by dogs. Turned into a jackalope, that's a favorite, Aphrodite, listed the punishments her rival had dished out. Don't forget about the gerbil incident. Hermes chimed in. A dark look came over the goddess' face at the reminder, before she glared at the impassive goddess of the hunt. Oh yes. I do so remember that one. Years of planning and preparations thrown right into the toilet. It wasn't that bad. Artemis rolled her eyes. Honestly, it was the tamest thing I could think of at the time, since we were supposed to be low interference. You caused the French Revolution. Stop meddling with my hunters, Aphrodite, and your children wouldn't be on my radar. For the last time, I am saving them. Aphrodite, Artemis, please. Demeter frowned at the two. That argument is nearly as bad as Athena and Poseidon's. Says the one who keeps bringing up her daughter's abduction. Poseidon huffed. Hades groaned into his palm while Demeter glared at the sea god. He abducted my daughter. Can't believe I'm saying this, but can we please get back to the story? Zeus sighed. It had been a week since his rescue and consequential sentencing, and Naruto still wasn't sure if his escape was the best option he'd taken. The immediate venture following his escape from Seattle to visit Leto was a bit surprising. The powerful hug that threatened to break his entire being was a memory he could have done without, but it was nice to discover that his adoptive grandmother cared. Naruto, like many, forgot that Leto was a Titaness, one of the second generation. Her strength was no laughing matter, even his mother winced when she got a similar embrace. Leto, who insisted he call her grandmother or something of the sort, Gran is what I usually prefer, managed to convince Artemis to lessen his punishment after he got to tell his side of the story. 4 months was better than 12, but now he also had an item placed on him, one that would track him anywhere he went. It came in the form of a thin silver band that wrapped around the back of his head, much like his uncle's laurel crown. Admittedly, it was better than the collar. You put a tracker on your mortal son. Apollo rubbed his temple. Of course you would. Well, after his uncle, the god of prophecy and foresight, failed to keep track of him, that was not the other me's job. Thank us for that, because he sucks at it. Unfortunately, according to Leto, it made him look like a fairy tale prince. Artemis wasn't amused by the comparison, given how most fairy tales portrayed maidens. At least they aren't the Disney variant. Those girls got off easy. Just look at the OG Little Mermaid. Apollo snorted. It was grim, but it was a good lesson. Hera smiled. And such a beautiful romance. Aphrodite swooned. Artemis and Talia made faces of disgust. There's an OG Little Mermaid? Percy whispered, brows furrowed together. Yeah, turns herself into sea foam. Real tragic since she was ruining the prince's relationship with his fiancée. Annabeth told him. Yeah, I could see that happening. Percy nodded. The haircut that came with the gift was weird, but only because Leto insisted upon it. He admitted to liking his hair shorter, it would be kept out of the way in a pursuit and made for less of a hassle in the mornings. Even his mother admitted the short hair suited him better. Leto then rid him of his jumpsuit, replacing it with dark blue jeans, brown hiking boots, and a fitted Marvel brand Moon Knight t-shirt. The shirt was the sort that emulated the comic book hero's chest, with detailed lines for the hero's build on the shirt, with lines that, oddly enough, matched his musculature definition perfectly. Mother, why? Artemis groaned into her hands as an image came upon the screen. My word. He is delectable, Aphrodite gushed. Weird seeing a Naruto without the orange. Apollo rubbed his chin. Almost feels off. I call it a blessing thus far. Artemis quipped sourly. Ha. Ha. Apollo clapped sarcastically. The goddess of comedy makes her return. It made Artemis give her mother a dirty look, something Naruto missed as he expressed his gratitude to his grandmother with a hug. That time it was worth nearly breaking his spine. Or so he thought for 5 minutes, until his grandmother revealed her ulterior motive: she wanted him to meet her surrogate family. Apparently, her charge Cassandra was at the right age to be betrothed, but had no suitors. Why, I don't. Artemis failed to follow this line of thought. Ha! Even mother is trying to keep you from making a male version of yourself. Apollo jeered. Leto and I really should compare notes, Aphrodite tittered. Of course, Leto forgot that while in the past it was commonplace for girls to be wed before their 20s, let alone before they reached their late teens, it wasn't that way for the modern world. That was without bringing in Artemis' opinion on the matter. Mother and daughter bickered and argued. Artemis claimed that Cassandra needed not fall into Aphrodite's snare, and that there was absolutely no way on earth she would allow the chance for her son to fall victim to the goddess of lust's poison. It is not poison. Aphrodite squawked. I dunno. Ares rubbed his chin. You threaten mortals with it all the time. Ares, do you want your treat or not? I'll shut up. Leto defended Aphrodite's role in the world and Cassandra's own desire for a partner, and told her daughter to think about it from a mortal's perspective. She went on to add that not every female wanted to remain a maiden, using herself as an example. Ooh, she played the womb card. Apollo winced. Naruto, wisely, kept his mouth shut, and began to contemplate, again, whether he should have stayed with the Amazons or have been turned into a jackalope. Oof, talk about being stuck in an awkward argument. Leo winced. It's like when your stepdad meets your actual dad. Percy nodded. I think Paul and I managed rather well, Percy. Poseidon frowned. The argument aside, the whole trip was beneficial for both goddess and mortal. In the end, he didn't meet Cassandra, but Leto had told him in the much gentler departing hug that she would always be there for him. His sentence was reduced by 2/3, and he got a nice haircut as well as more modern clothes. It was a nice way to start a punishment. Then came the reintegration to the hunt. Well, he had a good run. Dionysus cracked open a Coke. Next? It's not over yet, Dionysus, Demeter sighed. No? Unfortunate. In his modest opinion, saying it was a bad idea on his mother's part was an understatement. Artemis insisted he serve his punishment out under both her and her hunters' orders. Many of the hunters looked like hungry wolves after her announcement. Actual hungry wolves, the sort that craved to make his flesh come off of his body, and not the kind that he compared the Amazons to before. Some tried to make right on the comparison by shooting at him when he was cleaning the campgrounds. Others whistled an attack call and sicked the literal wolves after him. Naruto actually thought the latter was a little fun. Running with the wolves, or in this case from them, was something he always enjoyed doing when younger. Wow, he's a few pups short of a full litter, Frank mumbled. Did you just make that up? Leo asked, a brow arched. The Canadian demigod shook his head and the elvish boy frowned. Then where's it from? Percy said it once in his sleep. Lupa said it a lot when she was training me. Percy shrugged at all the looks he got. Zoe actively ignored his presence, which hurt more than he thought it would. At least Phoebe still acknowledged him. Granted, she was usually chiding him with blatant anti-male derogatory terminology whenever she had to bandage a cut that came from a misfire that struck his arm or leg, but it was still a sort of acknowledgement. The rest of the hunt, especially members that joined while he was away, generally followed Phoebe's example. There were a few that were less insulting or less overbearing, but they were just that, a few. You can just feel the kumbaya. Hearts as one, truly, Aphrodite giggled in her hand dainty. Such love for a boy your hunters have, Artemis. Why? I didn't know target practice was courtship for them. Please, Dite, we've been following these other worlds for a while now. Any Nalia pairing should have tipped you off, Hermes chuckled, while Artemis glowered at the goddess. Talia grumbled something incoherent under her breath, frazzle, Nalia, razzle. How much longer until she snaps? Piper asked Jason softly. 2, 3 more jabs tops. Think we can ask for a love seat? I don't think we'd make it out of the blast radius. Thankfully, Naruto learned that he was protected from most fatal attacks to some hunter's annoyance. And his gift from Leto was revealed to be enchanted, because it seemed to be indestructible. He had tried stabbing it while it hung on a branch to test how durable it was, and the silver-forged arrowhead shattered. Right, he can't use celestial bronze. Leo blinked. So then how do his arrows? It's probably based off of the silver compound that Selene had discovered before she, faded. Hephaestus answered his son, faltering when it came to the mention of a god's passing. Ah, Silver, the fictional original monster slayer, Leo sighed. The classics. Fictional, right. Hermes snorted. He once let a hunter shoot at his back, fighting down trained reflexes to dodge as he did, and the arrow was deflected into a nearby oak tree. The follow-up cheap shot through the calf had hurt, but he'd had much worse while training with Alf. The hunters have yet to figure out why he had a sudden hate for hockey pucks, horseradish, and hamster wheels. Well, now I need to know. Leo frowned. PFFT, not really. Kind of easy to figure out, Leo. Annabeth shook her head. Yeah? Explain. The hockey pucks were used as thrown projectiles while he ran on a horseradish-greased hamster wheel. Athena drawled. She shook her head. The Norse are creative, but ultimately unoriginal. Artemis seemed to be happy he was under her eye once more and, while she made sure none of her hunters got too much damage in, mostly let them act this way. Not out of malice, but to remind him that he had earned her ire and she wasn't one to forgive so lightly. She had taken many complaints from her hunters pertaining to his continued presence, but had alleviated their fears without much issue. It helped that he didn't go out of his way to bother the hunt as he did when he was younger and kept to himself as best he could. So yeah, it was bad, but it could have been much worse. He could have been killed and faced trial in the afterlife. Naruto had heard stories of punishments from Hades, and he didn't want to know what the god of the underworld would hold against him. That cookie you stole from Nightshade at Solstice? You get 2 years added to your sentence. Wow, that's savage Hades. Apollo blinked. The Lord of the Dead arched a brow. The average punishment time allotted for cookie theft is usually no less than 7 years. If anything, I'm being generous. If that was where he even wound up, but that was a concern for another day. Dibs. You may have to contend with the Norse and Egyptians, Poseidon teased. Hades glanced at him. I called dibs. They were summoned to Olympus a few weeks after his return. According to the wind spirit that delivered the summons, Naruto was to explain why he mingled with other pantheons to the king and the council while he was classified as a Greek mortal. It was news to him, and a little insulting to be referred to as if he were a possession, not a person, but such was life when dealing with immortals. Yep. We own your scrawny ass, kid, Ares chuckled. Deal with it. His fate would be decided after the hearing and, judging by the distressed spirit that was sent, the king wanted a very good explanation. Or else. The hunt left post-haste to New York, and soon enough found themselves before the doors of Olympus, where Naruto found himself stuck between Zoe and his mother, who was at her proper Olympian height of 10 feet. The three were followed by the 20 other hunters, and all of them were pointedly ignoring the awe and gossip that came from the minor gods and nymphs that watched them pass by. That's him? I never expected him to make it more than a year. He's got some weird squiggles on his arm. What a catch. We sure he's immortal? What's with the whiskers on his face? He reminds me of a fox. That last one made Naruto's right brow twitch. An echo of a bad memory laughed mockingly in the back of his head. Hey, cool. Kurama's still around. Leo grinned. How are you so sure? Hazel asked. Girl, trust me. I died once. You're either all the way gone, or you're not dead. He clenched his jaw and rubbed at his left arm when it let out a dull throb. Zoe grabbed his hand and pushed it back to his side. Thou will behave, she hissed. Her cold shoulder had been thawing, but it had only dropped whenever he was in need of stern talking to and Artemis was not available. I'm just rubbing my arm, Zoe. Thou are about to meet and speak before the entire Olympian Council, Zoe said, a hint of urgency in her words. Thou mustn't show any sign of nerves or discomfort. Lady Artemis will not be able to protect you here. You must fend for yourself. I've been on my own for almost a decade, not including my excursion. He grumbled. She leveled him with a hard sidelong glare and he winced. Okay, I get it. I'm being thrown to the wolves, and you can't help me. Does thou think this is a laughing manner? I mean, we have smote others for much less. Hermes admitted. Like that time you supposedly stubbed your toe on a park cart? Hestia asked, frowning at her nephew. Hey! Hermes pointed at her and scowled. That cabbage-selling swindler should have known better than to put it in a god's way. Plus, we enjoy squirming mortals. Dionysus smiled, showing all his teeth. Makes for a great show. No. Then stop acting like thou art still a child and prove it. At her words the group came to a stop. They arrived at the council chambers. The thrones were massive, and the beings seated on them were power incarnate. Naruto wiped any humor from his face and his eyes went cold. He ignored the heated stare coming from his irritated uncle, likely on account of the initial vanishing, but he would deal with that later. Stare harder, other me. Make him regret his life choices, Apollo urged while pressing 2 fingers to either side of his head. I believe that as his adoptive mother, that duty belongs to me, Apollo. Hush, lil sis, I'm trying to connect my mind between dimensions. The hunters left the room, and his mother took her place on her throne. Naruto discreetly looked from one god to the next as he stood in the doorway. Apollo looked as he always did, immaculate and lax. His youthful appearance had altered slightly. His golden locks were kept short, and he wore board shorts along with a pair of boat shoes and a white tank top. There was annoyance in his eyes, but also elation. He could feel his uncle's struggle to contain himself, to remain in his throne, and not glomp his nephew like he had many times before. Gah, there's some sort of interference. Apollo huffed and flopped back in his throne. His arms crossed over his chest as he pouted. You're lucky, lil nephew. Naruto then remembered exactly what he'd offered in exchange for his uncle's help to escape the Amazons, and did his best to contain the exasperated groan that threatened to burst forth. That was something he'd yet to tell his mother about. Seated on his uncle's left was his mother, and on his uncle's right was a beautiful woman with long dark hair. Her eyes were steeled, and it looked like she had millions of thoughts going through her mind. That must be Athena. Though he wondered why she had dark hair rather than the glowing gold her story spoke of, he brushed it aside and chalked it up to the goddess preference. Perhaps she wished to avoid the stereotype he had heard the boys in Seattle use. He too suffers the curse. Annabeth nodded sympathetically. Woe is the wise girl who has pretty hair, Percy teased with a gentle stroke of her ponytail. He chuckled when his girlfriend elbowed him in the side. Shush, you. On her right was a man who resembled many of the poachers and thugs he dealt with while acting as a vigilante in Canada. His face was scarred, yet would be considered handsome if the right person were asked. Red glows emerged in the sockets beyond his wraparound shades. That was clearly Ares. The urge to throw something at him was strong, but Naruto refrained from doing so. Pansy. Ares, he's not even real, Hera sighed. Then stopped and looked around. Did anyone else hear that? Hear what? Zeus asked.
I could have sworn there was a sudden cry of dismay.
Care to elaborate? It was as if a lone woman had raged out from the void before she was suddenly silenced. Hera looked from the window to her wine, then at the god that was lord over it. Dionysus, did you do something to my drink? Hera, I'm a petty drunk, not a moron. The god huffed. As if he would taint something as sacred to him as wine. Next to the god of war was the queen, if her regal aura was anything to go by. Hera was just as beautiful as Athena, but her eyes were harder, much more defended. Guarded and distrusting. Expected, considering the charges against him. At least she didn't sneer at him. No, she saves that for her husband's kids. Talia muttered. Artemis, really, I know of a few wonderful training companies that would happily take your pet and make it more docile. Hera swirled her goblet. Talia, please continue, Artemis sighed. He skipped over the king, since he was not present yet, and looked to the regal throne on the right of the Thunderers. There was a man who looked like he'd been enjoying a beach day, as evident by the Tommy Bahama shirt and tan shorts. His beard was like a fisherman's, cut short, yet full and unkempt from days at sea. If that wasn't Poseidon, Naruto would eat his boots. The god had a dark glower on his face, brooding over something that wouldn't likely spell good news if the mortal accidentally upset him. Maybe. Poseidon shrugged. He had no attachments to this Naruto other than his name. Sure, he was heroic, but with the counts against him and whatever else was on his mind, he couldn't deny the claim. Next to the sea god was a woman with an earthly feel about her. Her hair was brown and her eyes just the same. She had fruits and vegetables littered about her throne, what looked like an ear of corn in her hair, and a few wheat stalks popped up around her. Demeter had a gleam in her eyes much like Hera's, but it held feelings behind it that even a blind man could see. The motherly gaze made him a bit unsettled. It felt as if she was going to interrogate him about his eating habits or something. Weird. Do I appear desperate if I seek this boy out? Because he's quickly becoming one of the best candidates I've yet to interview. Hades asked, looking at his brothers. Poseidon chuckled while Zeus rolled his eyes. Oh, ha. Yuck it up, Hades, Demeter sneered with her arms crossed. When the time comes that this book shows my son, you will regret your laughter. I'm quaking in my throne. After Demeter came Hephaestus, easy to spot by the tool in his hand and the device he tinkered with. He looked nothing like he was depicted as in mortal text. There was the occasional fire in his beard, but aside from that he looked like a shorter, slightly more approachable and bearded Ares without the biker motif and scarring. Naruto had the feeling that, like the hunt, the craftsman would rather be somewhere else. Naruto glanced at Aphrodite once, not even for a whole second, and his heart nearly jumped into his throat. She was breathtaking. Why, what a charmer. Now, who does he see me as? His Amazon love? Talia? Or, is there another? Aphrodite tittered. So beautiful that he couldn't find words to describe her or even think of why he felt the way he did. He was reminded of his first kiss, the pleasure that floated through his body, wondering how she would. He immediately turned away, his face flushed and heart pounding like a drum. Holy shit. That was absolutely terrifying. A glance at her made him go nearly brain dead. A beautiful sigh escaped the goddess of love. Truly, it is a curse. One I am forced to bear. So modest. Artemis drawled. She shook her head. At least he will not succumb to your appearance as easily as others do. Kid's gay. Ares nodded. Hermes and Apollo looked at each other. Makes sense. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Apollo was quick to add. Hera nodded her agreement while the other gods remained silent. Love is beautiful in all forms. Aphrodite smiled. Faye. Artemis scoffed disagreed. He shivered at the loss of self-control. Was that because of her control over love or lust? Either way, he'd be more than happy if it never happened again. Pointedly keeping his gaze away from Aphrodite, he looked at the next god. This one, he recognized. He knew. The shrewd man who held Ms. Castellan, and who resembled his friend. Hermes, who went bug-eyed at the sight of him. Hey, you're... Not so loud, Hermes. I'm trying to sleep. The gruff scolding came from the last member of the present Olympians. He was a portly sort, his hair curly and looked like it was a dark purple. He had on an orange tiger-striped shirt that appealed to something in the back of Naruto's mind, which made his arm tingle again. His eyes, though, were bagged and tired, and hinted at a frustration that only an addict unable to get their fix would understand. Many such individuals he dealt with when trying to address the drug problem in Philadelphia. I feel his pain, Dionysus sighed. Sorry, Dionysus, Hermes said, but he clearly did not mean it. He had his eyes locked on Naruto, slowly relaxing. An almost grateful look appeared in the god's eye before it was masked by light-hearted indifference. I thought I recognized him from a delivery job. Dionysus merely huffed, and whatever he was about to belch out was overshadowed by the loud crack as a bolt of lightning struck down on the king's throne. Naruto snapped his attention to the man that now adorned it. Okay, Naruto thought as he looked at the king, I'll admit it. That was awesome. Ah, yes. If only he'd voiced it. Poseidon smirked. Would have done good to groom the god of ego. Oh, sod off you wailing lard. Zeus grumbled. Zeus was dressed in a blue pinstripe suit, his hair and beard longer and thicker than the others. He almost reminded Naruto of that Jedi from episode 1, arguably one of the two greatest parts of that film. He and Alf had snuck into a theater in Vancouver to catch the premiere. That little traitor. Apollo squawked in outrage. He should have been at that premiere with me. They walked out a bit disappointed from that film, and a bit disturbed with the character of Anakin. What kind of 9-year-old boy hits on a 14-year-old girl? He did do that, didn't he? Hazel blinked. She shivered. Ugh, that's wrong on so many levels. Don't forget the way he stalked her with his eyes in episode 2, Piper said, shaking her head. Whoever wrote that relationship was never in a real one. Thank you. Talia threw her arms up. Finally, someone outside of the hunt with common sense. I am never living the prequels down, am I? Apollo grumbled. Nope, Hermes chuckled. Zeus' eyes were the same electric blue as Talia's were. The memory of her made him recall her current status as a pine tree. His admiration and respect for Zeus faltered, but he kept his features from reflecting it as best as he could. Step forward, mortal. Your execution shall be as swift as lightning. Tilda. That's not funny. Zeus grunted at the mad cackle Hades gave. What? It sounds like something you'd say. Don't deny it. I didn't, but I don't cackle like a cartoon villain. Not in public. Hades smirked. But perhaps the queen may be able to defend you here? Hera pursed her lips and looked at her wine glass. Then looked at her husband, who appeared to be pleading at her in his subtle way. She sighed. Only once during the mortal holiday of All Hallows' Eve. I knew it. Hera, how could you? Hades beamed, killing thousands across the planet, while Zeus glowered at his wife. Poseidon was holding his stomach, he was laughing so hard. Gods, he even sounds like thunder, Naruto thought as he walked around the hearth and knelt in front of the king. He bowed his head and recited the words his mother told him to say, Lord Zeus, thank you for the honor of allowing a mortal such as myself to walk your halls. I bring you offerings of physical value, but nothing compares to what you rightfully own. Instead, I bring you myself, my honor and my word, that I shall not speak falsely before you. Hey! Nice trick, Artemis. You teach him to roll over and play dead, too? The biker, Ares, said after a moment of silence. He was given a frigid glare, and smiled toothily in response. Come on. You know you want to shoot me. Do it. Do it, bitch. Ares grinned, eagerly awaiting an excuse to pick a fight. An arrow flew into his thigh and he yowled. A fine shot, Apollo. Thanks, sis. Why, I oughta. A bolt of lightning shot over his head and he glanced at his father. Apollo. You instigated it. The king narrowed his eyes. Ares sat back with his arms crossed. Hate this place sometimes. Hate it so much. Zeus ignored his son's interjection and his gaze burned a hole in Naruto's head. Rise, mortal. Naruto did, standing tall with his head up to look the king in the eye. You are brought here accused of treachery. Of conspiring with others. What have you to say in your defense? I'm mortal, Naruto said. Clear-sighted, different than most, but I am mortal all the same. I'm not Greek. Not Roman. Not Egyptian. Not Norse. I'm a mortal who had the fortune to be considered worthy to be raised as the only son to your chaste daughter. If I conspired against Olympus through my actions, it was never done intentionally. Zeus sat back and the sky rumbled. The room was tense and began to smell of ozone. He glanced to his right, and Athena spoke next. The runes on your left arm. What are they? Tramp stamp? Aphrodite suggested. On his arm? Artemis countered flatly. I am not one to judge a kink. That makes no sense. Why on Olympus would anyone be aroused by artwork on a mortal body? Artemis, we agreed last year that there would be no kink shaming in the council chambers. Hera tiredly warned the goddess. Someone had to keep the rules obeyed, and her husband was not at his best with so many of her nieces and nephews around, thus the duty fell to her. Yes, Hera. I have no idea. Naruto glanced down at his arm. I know when and how I got them, but I don't know what they mean, do, or why they appeared. I was in Canada. Relaxing after a spar with my teacher, whittling at a stick, when I was attacked by a creature that called itself a kitsune. A Japanese spirit attacked you in Canada? Apollo asked, incredulous. Yeah, That does sound ridiculous. Apollo nodded. He did specify that it called itself a kitsune. Athena affirmed. Yeah, but, come on, that's ridiculous. He got a deadpan stare from his nephew. It called itself a kitsune, Naruto reiterated. I'm only describing it as it claimed to be one. Thus far it was never able to attack me physically. It was either a mental attack or spiritual. I'm not sure, but it didn't exist on our plane until I used Nordic runes to bring it forth. Could you show us? Athena asked. To prove your claim. The runes I used were carved absent-mindedly. The incantation that followed I cannot recall. My mentor would be better to ask about this, but I haven't seen him since that day. That's a terrible defense. Zeus scoffed. Father. Artemis frowned. I'm sorry, Artemis, but his defense is flimsy at best, and knowing myself as I do, I wouldn't believe that line. Convenient. Who was your mentor? Zeus asked. Not the Egyptian? A heavy layer of ozone filled the room once more. No. The Egyptian I've interacted with was Khonsu, Naruto said. Hermes audibly caught his breath in a strangled gasp. The mortal paid it no mind and continued, he and I struck an accord of sorts. Bad business. Hermes rubbed his temples. The nightmares brought on by that ass. I'll take phrases used in regards to Hephaestus after his one night stands for 100, Alex. Apollo smirked while Ares belted out a laugh. Hephaestus mock laughed before he flipped the sun god off. Go drive yourself into a black hole. Explain. The hole or else thing continued to loom over his head like the bolt of lightning that was waiting to be thrown. We made a bet during our initial encounter. One I should have walked away from. The last bit, he grumbled to himself, before meeting the king's gaze again. He wagered his soul and I my life. With this, Naruto reached into his pocket and pulled out his die. The little cube refused to leave his side, as if it were the physical proof of his bond to Khonsu. It appeared in his pocket once he had been reclothed by Leto, since the Amazon jumpsuit didn't have any way for it to stay on his form. Eyes of Olympus council zeroed in on the game piece, none more intently than the goddess of the hunt, who glared at the latest addition to her list of enemies. Try as she might, Artemis could not keep it from his person. She had even shot it into the night sky, launching it from the confines of the planet, but it returned within the hour to Naruto's possession. Artemis inhaled deeply through her nostrils and then exhaled. That's annoying. That's all? Apollo arched a brow. That's all I will say while Hestia is present. And? We tied. Naruto held 2 points so that the cube rested on a vertice in either finger. He wagered it would land on an edge after I had bet it would land on a face. It landed like this, balanced on a flat stone. So he didn't choose either a sun nor a moon, but both? Reina asked. She cupped her chin. How is that fair? It isn't. Hermes held his sides and laughed. Oh, man. That must have rattled that sand-walking bastard's cage good. Right on, kid. Hermes? Zeus asked, the room looking to the god of thieves. Gambling and dice games fell into his domain. The spry god rubbed his chin. Anything is possible, Hermes said after a moment. But I would be a fool not to suspect foul play from Khonsu. He could have enchanted it to land that way before it was thrown. He swore to both Ra and on the sticks that it wasn't and wouldn't be tampered with before the bet was made, Naruto said. He pocketed the die and waited as the council contemplated the Egyptian's bold move. It wasn't every day that a deity from another pantheon invoked the Styx's oath. Yes, even some of our own have issues keeping to it. Hera drawled while looking at her brothers and husband. Mine were born before the oath was made. Hades refuted. And it's null and void now anyway. Thanks in part to Poseidon's son. Zeus grumbled. You're welcome, brother. Poseidon smirked. So while I don't have control over him, he does not own me. We reached an accord. I would do 3 tasks for him, and he would owe me 3 favors in turn. He's cashed in 2 requests, I've only made 1. What were his requests? Zeus asked immediately. The first was to leave the continental United States. He wanted me to train out of your sight. Given who I trained with, and that was? Freyr, the Norse god of summer. Oh, my. Demeter began fanning herself. The what? Isn't that Thor from the Avengers? Leo asked, arching a brow as an image of the god appeared on the screen. No. Thor's a redhead. Apollo shook his head. Had Stan's pal change his hair just to mess with him back in the day. Still prefer that Thor to the actual one. Zeus grumbled. He's such a fat-headed ass. Wow, hypocrisy in action. Poseidon smirked. Will wonders never cease? Hades added. Oh, the both of you can kiss the most solid part of father's rear. Demeter flushed and corn atop her head began to pop as her face began to glow. Apollo whistled his awe while Hermes rolled his eyes. Dionysus had fallen asleep and Hephaestus looked bored, tinkering with another abstract device. Ares picked at his nails with an enormous knife in disinterest, and Athena began to knead her temple as she became overwhelmed by the possible disastrous scenarios that could have been. Poseidon hummed, as did Hera, but it was Aphrodite's reaction that drew his attention, before he quickly averted his gaze, lest he be bewitched by her again. No wonder Frigg gave me warning, she tittered, ignoring the blonde's action. What does that mean? Zeus demanded. What does that mean? Zeus asked, eyes narrowed. Ah, Zeus in stereo. Hades drawled. Hilarious as always. That there was a new heartbreaker on the prowl. Really, Artemis, how could you keep him from us? There's so many possibilities, Aphrodite said, her voice held a smile to it that Naruto knew would make him melt if he dared look. Probably in a literal manner. Seen that happen before. Hephaestus smirked. Best April Fool's Day revenge prank ever. Speak for yourself. Aphrodite frowned. I had to clean up a melted demigod out of my temple. It was all slushy and ick. And it was my demigod that melted. Ares raged. He pounded his fist on the arm of his throne. Little bastard snuck a peek at my girl. Frank, how could you? That is not funny, Hazel. Frank deadpanned at his giggling girlfriend. Not how he wanted to go, especially since he was sure his mother would revive him just for the sake of punishing him further. He looked instead at his mother, to see her response. Artemis kept a stony face, but quirked an eyebrow at the goddess of love. It was a rather dumb question on Aphrodite's part, he decided. As he grew in her care, Naruto had heard his mother and her hunters curse the Lady of Doves more often than he heard them insult the sex he was born with, and that was saying something. Aw, I knew you liked me, sis. Apollo smiled. It varies from day to day. Hey. She's getting punny. I was being serious. Hey, yeah, I knew that. As interesting as that tidbit of information is, I believe we still have the other request to make note of, Poseidon said, looking at his brother pointedly. As if to say there were other things to concern themselves with. Naruto got the feeling that the Lord of the Sea wasn't talking about his trial. When is this trial taking place? Percy asked suddenly. It's gotta be after the lightning your first summer. Annabeth corrected herself when the sky rumbled. No mention of Talia yet, and Nightshade is still alive. Nico muttered. Oh, we're in Bermuda. Percy sank down in his seat. He blew out some air. Great. Indeed. What other action did you perform for the Egyptian? Zeus asked. I hunted, killed and then banished a revived warlock that threatened all of New Orleans with a zombie apocalypse. Some kid named Rick helped me out. I think he was Greek. Can't say for sure, Naruto said with a shrug. Oh. You're the one who helped Roderick. Demeter smiled. Thank you for that, dear. He had such a hard time getting back to camp. Stopped a zombie uprising. Hades waved his hands. Help Demeter's demigod. You don't want a zombie uprising? Poseidon asked, knowing full well the answer. He smirked at his elder brother's glare. Do not make me go on another tangent about the bureaucracy of managing my realm, Poseidon. Not to mention zombies love to unionize. Nico pinched his nose in annoyance. Oh, don't even get me started. The Lord of the Dead rubbed his face with a groan. Their union is worse than the mortal police union. What is that supposed to mean? Zeus frowned, since by slim technicality that fell under his jurisdiction. Zeus, you're repeating yourself. Hera pointed out. And that is a debate for mortals to cover, not us, Hades. I never said we had to, Hera. Hades grumbled, glowering at his sister. Can't imagine why, though, considering he was being hounded by those lions. Naruto mused to himself while giving a nod to the goddess of the harvest. He returned full attention to the king, who continued to level him with a hard stare. That is all he asked of you? Zeus asked. Yes. You approached the camp with the Icer, he's a Vanir, actually, but I doubt you care about that detail. Gods know that Odin doesn't. Oh, good. Wonderful. He's met the one-eyed monster himself. Zeus clenched the arms of his chair and the sky rumbled his displeasure for all to know. Did you just call Odin a dick? Poseidon smirked. Yes, Poseidon. Bravo, brother. Hades nodded while the king of the seas burst into another bout of laughter. I'm surprised you caught that, Athena snarked. If you'd met him, you wouldn't be. The god of the oceans shot back. His pride, like his intellect, rivals yours. Both are unquestionable. Most of the time. Poseidon, don't be rude. Hestia chided her brother while her niece's steely glare leveled on him. You will tell us why. In my teacher's defense, I was the one who wished to visit the boundary. When I performed requests for Khonsu, he constantly pulled me from the standard flow of time, to keep us out of limelight. Not for malicious deeds, but to ensure no conflict would come between the pantheons, Naruto said. A hint of frustration appeared on his face. He would tell me after the time distortion of things and events that he thought I would find important. It was from him I learned of Talia's sacrifice. Can I just say that time whammies are annoying? Hazel groaned. Being displaced and put into a new time just really grates the nerves. Here. Nico deadpanned. At least he knows what chicken nuggets are. Valdez, I swear, Hazel glowered at the snickering Latino. Tension filled the room once more, along with ozone. A lot of ozone. It was actually starting to become uncomfortable and very difficult to breathe. Choose your next words carefully, mortal. Zeus did not have to warn him, but the courtesy was likely more for Artemis' sake than it was his. There was a gleam that appeared in the queen's eye that made Naruto uneasy, and he swallowed. Although we did not know each other long, I consider Talia to be a friend. As I do with Luke and Annabeth, he said after a moment. Athena was stoic at his words, but Hermes had gained a small smile. The mortal continued with, I felt it necessary to visit and apologize for leaving them so abruptly. Nalia is still strong. In every verse. Apollo applauded with a proud sniffle. I ship it. I always ship it. I hate it. Talia grumbled. Would they still have Joan? Because I'll only ship if she's the outcome. Jason. What? I want to be an uncle. It sounds like fun. The glare he got from his mother did not go unnoticed, but it was ignored for the sake of keeping the trial on track. She apparently had been aware of his presence at that clearing and his flee from the hunt. Yes. We never did see that play out. Athena mused while her fellow Chase sister frowned. He'd tried explaining that he was only doing what he had thought she had willed, but that conversation would always be interrupted by a hunter's timely arrival in one shape or another. Why the fates, of any pantheon, had decided to keep this debate from happening, he didn't know, but it was starting to grate on his nerves. Which begs the question of why you left them, Zeus said, unknowingly interrupting the mortal's train of thought. His eyes began to spark. Why did you abandon them? Of course you would. Hera rolled her eyes. We are not discussing this. Zeus glared at his wife, daring her to say otherwise. Zeus, this trial is not to shift blame for the consequences of your mistake, Hera interjected. The air dropped about 20 degrees as Zeus looked at her. The husband and wife held heated gazes, and the higher tension made Ares look up from his nail cleaning in mild interest. And perhaps a hint of hope. Hera and Zeus held a hushed, angry conversation in ancient Greek, and Naruto chanced to look at his mother. She seemed bored, as if this sort of thing happened all the time. A simple glance to him conveyed all of her thoughts on the matter, and wrapped up with a stern glare that told him to pay attention. The king and queen of Olympus sat back in their thrones, their bodies still tense and their brows furrowed by their tempers. Zeus looked back at him and let out a sharp breath through his nose, like a raging bull that was cooling off after beating down a rodeo clown. On a related note, Alf had some weird training ideas. They were effective, but still weird. I want to see that, Leo laughed along with many of the demigods. Oh, man, that's got to be hilarious. I wonder how effective it is for training. Artemis tapped her chin. Plus, it would allow us to get a hunter inside for more information on the questionable bull training. That line of thought sobered Talia up real fast, and she hastily kept reading in order to get her patron away from that line of thought. What was your request to Khonsu? Zeus asked as the ozone in the air steadily and slowly dropped. To see the night of my birth, Naruto said. He felt his mother's gaze fall upon him, but kept his attention on the king. She wasn't aware of what he asked for, and he wasn't exactly happy that he'd been cheated out of clear-cut answers from Khonsu, but he should have expected it from the Egyptian god of thieves. He balled a hand into a fist and then relaxed. I witnessed my birth and a few moments after it. Wow, he is yours to a T. Apollo rubbed his face. Why does anyone want to know that? It was crucial to know to make an informed decision on my maidenhood. Artemis huffed. Whatever, wish girl. He'd initially wanted to see if his father had done the harm that had befallen his birth mother, but he hadn't phrased it correctly. Khonsu used that against him, and turned it into a lesson. One had to be very specific when making requests of any god, and doubly so for a trickster god. Is that all? It is. I swear on the river Styx that all I have said to you is the truth. The skies boomed. Not of Zeus' will. Zeus sat back in his throne and glanced around the council. They each looked up and met his gaze, with Poseidon being the last. The god of the sea drummed his fingers on the arm of his throne. Brother, he began, only for Zeus to lift his hand. Poseidon's gaze hardened, But he went quiet. Your testimony has spared your life, but I find your presence intolerable, mortal, Zeus said. Leave these chambers and Olympus. Never to walk here again, lest you wish for your demise. Harsh but fair, I guess. Percy muttered to Annabeth. At least he's not a smoking crater. Lucky break there. The sky boomed again, with added lightning to emphasize Zeus' decree, and Naruto ducked his head. Thank you, Lord Zeus. Your sentence is wise and shall be obeyed. He left the chambers without any further questions, but heard Poseidon begin to speak again as he left. The blonde's brow furrowed. He wondered what it was that was so important about a ship named Andromeda. Sad times. Annabeth frowned, a depressing look on her face as she and Percy moved closer together. Absolutely not. Uh-oh, sadder times incoming. Quiet, seaweed brain. Months had passed and Naruto's punishment had been lifted for some time. The hunters had stopped their lethal assaults, but still used him as a mobile target practice when they could. Their anger worked out in his favor, since their attacks kept his evasiveness, agility and reflexes up to par. Not as well as a raging rodeo bull could, though he wasn't about to share that with them. It wouldn't be smart for him to give them ideas, yeah, no kidding. Now stop mentioning it. Talia glared at the book. What was that, Talia? Artemis asked. Nothing, Lady Artemis. To the hunter's annoyance, rather than send him away once his punishment ended, Artemis revealed to them that he would become one of the few male members of the hunt after the winter solstice. Apollo? The goddess of love had a vacant look on her face. Yes, Aphrodite, I heard. Apollo's voice was tight, eyes gazing in a 1,000-yard stare. They looked at each other, worry written on their faces. We have to do something, they declared simultaneously. Or, hear me out, Piper said carefully. You could let him live his own life and not risk angering the goddess of the hunt, who may take it out on demigoddesses like myself. No, it's too risky. Aphrodite shook her head. Piper groaned and dropped her head on Jason's shoulder while he chuckled at her dramatics. It was a valiant effort, Piper. Reyna patted the girl on the shoulder. Nothing valiant about it. I just don't want to risk her coming after us. She had to inform the council before making him the offer, so as to ensure that her father didn't do something foolish from shock. When questioned about her decision by her lieutenant, Artemis had only this to say, like many boys, my son has become too prideful to seek help from his mother, and has lived far too freely like his foolish uncle. I will not allow him to fall under Aphrodite's sway or become a loathsome man, something that would have happened if Donna hadn't messaged me. On that note, remind Diana to give Lycaon a smidge of leeway if he starts hunting Amazons. I feel like that's a bit much. Frank frowned. Dude. Percy looked at Frank flatly. Enslaved boyfriends. Still boyfriends though, Leo countered. Enslaved. Point to you, Aqualad. However, there was a small, itty-bitty, little detail that was left out of her son's recount of his trials that put a massive, obnoxious, ego-inflated hole in her plan. I want to say Zeus, but go shove it in a blowhole, Poseidon. Artemis, he swore an unbreakable oath to me. One night as my wingman, Apollo said, oddly stern as he stared down his irate twin within her personal tent. The rest of the hunt was packing up the camp and his nephew was preparing the wolves for travel. Apollo crossed his arms and matched her glare with his own. Let's face it, with that ruckus last summer over the fleece, the great prophecy is getting closer to playing out. Speaking of last summer, did you tell him yet? No, not that it is any of your concern. For you will not be allowed to take my son out for one of your stupid guys' nights, Apollo, Artemis said. Arte, you're killing me here. No, there would be a lot more pain involved if that were the case. The fact you sound so sure about that is very concerning. Her eyes were cold and her posture tense. She would not falter in her stance. Her son would not become a stupid boy like her brother. It's not like I'm going to go bar hopping with him, Artemis. Apollo deadpanned. He rubbed his face with one hand, trying to calm down. Look, I know I lost him, but that was one time. For 8 years. She was still a little sore about it. He is a mortal that ran away. Do you know how many mortal kids run away from home? There's a lot of them out there. I'm sorry I lost him, Artemis, but it's not my fault. He's mortal. I warned you, way back when I first met him, I warned you he would have a crazy life. Nobody ever listens to me. Apollo throws his arms up. I'm like a stop sign at a four-way intersection. Do people not look at those where you drive? Percy asked, eyes wide in horror. Well, I don't. Super glad I don't ride in his chariot. Leo muttered, the demigods all nodding their agreement. And you did nothing to stop his interactions with the Egyptians or the Norse? To warn me about his meddling with foreign magics? Artemis hissed as her eyes began to shine a bright silver. It doesn't work that way and you know it, Apollo snapped, his eyes glowed gold. They held angry stares for a long while before the god of the sun closed his eyes and let out a sigh. This argument is over. I will take Naruto out tonight, Artemis. I would sooner join Aphrodite's handmaidens before I would allow that. Because if I don't, he will die fighting against the Manticore. Artemis' scowl deepened. Explain. You've been hunting the Manticore for some time now. I don't know why, but I'm certain Zeus has a reason for it. If you take Naruto on this hunt, he will sacrifice himself to protect a camper, someone who you are considering for the hunt, Apollo said. To go against fate, will also follow fate, this is my decree, Apollo stated, his eyes glowing with powerful light. You ruined it. You ruined it with a haiku. Ares groaned into his hands while the other Olympians sighed or rubbed their heads. He growled before glaring at his sunny brother. How are you supposed to be intimidating with an us-forsaken haiku? You will eat a dick. So I proclaim it to be. I will laugh at you. Fuck you. Ares, Zeus, Hestia and Hera glared at the god. Apollo chuckled. Works every time. The weight of the warning made Artemis pause to take it in. She pursed her lips, her son was selfless enough to do such a thing, especially if his sacrifice was for who Apollo thought it would be for, as he'd claimed the girl as his friend. Her twin put a hand on her shoulder and gave her a concerned glance. If we lose him again, he will be lost to us forever. There is no guarantee he'll go to the underworld. I called dibs. Hades drummed his fingers on the arm of his throne. That's still what mortals refer to as a thing, correct Dionysus? As far as I am aware, Dionysus shrugged. How do I know this isn't a ploy to get me to agree? Artemis asked. She hoped it was, because if it wasn't, she could lose her son after just getting him back. Artemis, I swear on the sticks, that what I have told you is what will come to pass if I don't take him out tonight, Apollo said. Come on Styx, back me up here, baby. Apollo rubbed his hands together. Oh, us, what would be so wrong about a respectable male among my hunters? Artemis scowled at her twin. Everything you just said infuriates me on a level you cannot comprehend, Artemis. Everything. Aphrodite deadpanned. She turned to the demigoddess reading. Grace, prove that the Styx is on our side. Talia, it's all right. You may continue, dear. Hestia offered softly. Talia let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding, and then did. The sky boomed outside and she closed her eyes, silently cursing her brother. She took a deep breath and then exhaled. Her eyes opened, her frigid silver locked onto her twin's blue, and she leveled a pointed finger in his face. Swear to me that Naruto is not going to aid you in finding others to sate your lust. Boo. Boo. Apollo scowled. Did you really expect anything less? Hermes asked. Well, I'm sure while he was younger and going on field trips with the best uncle ever, fight me. You won't. Apollo smirked at the annoyed look that crossed the traveler's face. He waved the younger god off. Anyway, while I was giving him a world tour like the awesome uncle I am, I was definitely using him to my advantage. You will never babysit for me. Artemis deadpanned. Took the words right out of my mouth. Hermes nodded. Nor will you. She smirked at their pouts. I'm the virgin goddess, remember? Why do you make it out to be so crude? Swear it, Apollo, or I will take my chances with your sudden prophecy. Fine. I swear on the Styx that while we're out tonight, my honorary nephew, Naruto, adopted son of my beloved lil sister, will not be used to find others to help me sate my lust. For the last time, I am not the younger sibling. Artemis growled as the sky boomed again. Now how can you be so sure about that? I'm the god of truth, after all. She regretted this agreement already. I am sure it is one of many. No. Not really. Artemis sniffed at her twin. I only have a few regrets. How mature. The first, I'm sure, was allowing you to watch him in the first place. Ooh, and a low blow from the huntress catches the sportsman off guard. Ares cackled while Apollo let out an offended huff. I regret ever making that prayer, Naruto said, scowling out the window of the golden sports car. He kept his gaze away from his uncle while they rode across the sky in the sun chariot. The god of the sun often forgot to dim himself when he was behind the wheel. Not the regret you should have, lil nephew. Apollo smirked at the boy. He reached over and flicked the blonde in the side of the head. A flash of light encompassed the blonde teen, and when it died down, his clothes had changed. Gone was the practical silver attire, and in its place was a casual black suit, jacket and shoes. However, it was what lay beneath the jacket that made his nephew's brow arch. Uncle Fred. Naruto was trying so hard not to snarl at the deity that had done away with his personal belongings, including his gift from Leto. Tell me why I'm wearing an orange dress shirt. Ooh, nicely done, Apollo. Aphrodite smiled. A muted orange would have been better, but still well done. You need a brighter color scheme. Apollo hummed. You know, not many blonde men can pull off orange. I think it's your color. Give me my shirt back, or I'll tell mother where you're taking me. Oh? Artemis asked. And where are they going? I also wonder. 10 drachma says it's a strip club. Hermes grinned. Ares chuckled and Hephaestus snorted. I would, probably, maybe do that, yeah. Apollo admitted, deflating from his initial outrage. Apollo? What? Truth God, sis. And it's not getting tail with him as long as we're just watching. Little, fine. With another flick, this one just a tad harder to get his annoyance across, the god of the sun reverted his nephew's shirt back to the original gift. Be happy that this is a film premiere. I've heard good things about this movie from my man Kevin. Uncle, I swear on the sticks that if this is a Footloose remake that was May. Apollo wobbled his hand. Shelton tried, but nothing will ever top Logan's original track. While I'm absolutely thrilled you know what that film is, I wasn't talking about Bacon. I was talking about Kevin Sullivan. Hey, I know that name. Frank smiled. He produced a show that my gram and I used to watch. Naruto furrowed his brow. The Canadian director? No, the one from Zimbabwe, yes, the Canadian. Apollo shook his head. I would have taken you to see an action movie, but unfortunately someone was too busy with his Amazonian girlfriend to enjoy the summer. Poor Hala. Raina shook her head. PFFT, Naruto sounds like a rejected Disney knockoff. Your sister had her shot. Aphrodite scoffed. She grinned. Just makes the coming Nalia all the sweeter. Talia took a deep breath. She was not going to be baited. She was better than that. Fire danced across his face and he sputtered. She wasn't my G-girl. Right. The god of the sun grinned. I'm so proud of you, kiddo. Them Amazons, who, almost as hard to flirt with as hunters sometimes. I blame Ares for that, being the thick-headed idiot he is. Although, it is thanks to him that we have managed to bring the phrase death by snoo into pop culture. I am both mortified yet proud of that saying. Somehow, Aphrodite sighed beautifully while Ares snickered. See? I do some good. At least in a media sense at times. The conflicted feelings are real, Percy mumbled while holding his head. Giggling, Annabeth nudged him. Uncle, can we please not talk about this? No. Pressure him. Get details, gosh darn it. Leo. Hazel glared at the elfish teen. What? There's no way he didn't get coerced into further exploration. Or hear about how other date nights went. You really miss Calypso, don't you? Piper asked. Beauty queen, you don't know the half of it. Well, I guess I can lay off. You always ask so nicely for permission to do things. Apollo gave the boy a scathing glower, eyes glowing to put an emphasis on how upset he was. Except for that one time where you disappeared for 8 years. With not just an Egyptian trickster god of all things, oh no, you just had to make friends with an Icer. An Icer? Those guys are crazy and flaunt their version of the apocalypse without a care in the world. They actually care a lot about it. And he's Vanir, not an Icer. Naruto sank into his chair at another glowing glare and quickly added. Most of it wasn't my fault. Maybe not, but you're the one that left Pennsylvania, kiddo. And guess who got the brunt of your mother's anger? Apollo rubbed his head at the twinge of a phantom pain. Do you know how long it takes a god to heal from a silver arrow to the head? Do you? I get the feeling you're going to tell me anyway. It takes a long time. Like, 5 whole hours. That's like 5 whole seconds of waiting. It's like having a splinter or something. Apollo shuddered while the demigods didn't look impressed. Do you know how it feels to have a splinter in your eye? It's not a fun experience. Speak for yourself. Ares smirked while stripping a branch with a knife. Giving them out is a blast. Haven't you been turned into a mortal before? That is so not the point. I am angry with you, damn it, let me rant. A ringing phone interrupted this time. The source was a golden BlackBerry marked with a laurel crown that had been strapped to the dash. Apollo glared at the device set on his dashboard, then at the boy he considered kin. With a frustrated growl, the god snatched the phone off its holder. This isn't over. He growled before he gave his attention to the phone and answered it. What? I'm busy, oh, sorry, Arte. Yeesh, should blame that on Roman me. Apollo winced. If you ever answer one of my calls like that, I will shoot you in the head. Artemis warned. I know. How did mom contact? Does mom have a cell phone? Naruto stared incredulously at his uncle. Apollo glanced at him in amusement, as if he'd suddenly sprouted a second head from his shoulders. Yeah, he's here. We were just on our way to you knew what we were going to do. Yes you did. You agreed to I am not going back on my word, Artemis. You sound just like Mom. Apollo rolled his eyes. Look, we can argue about this for decades right now, or we could get back to the point of your call. Naruto strained to listen in. He got maybe every other fifth syllable. A sense of growing dread settled in his gut as his uncle's excitement became more apparent. He gulped when Apollo hung up, smiling brighter than his chariot ever could on a cloudless day. Change of plans, bud, we've got damsels to save. The god of the arts was quick to raise a finger before Naruto could speak. Excuse you? Artemis demanded with crossed arms. I meant the campers. Apollo was quick to defend himself. Talia ground her teeth as she turned to look at the god, eyes sparking. You were talking about me. What? No. PFFT, come on, do I seem like that kind of jerk? Huh? Apollo smiled a bit too forcefully while Artemis' eyes narrowed. Talia nodded curtly and turned back to the book. Apollo, she's mortal. Why are you trying to lie to her? Hermes asked softly. He shrunk back at the glowing glare he got. Because, Hermes, the sun god hissed. She's the lieutenant of Artemis, and the last time I insulted her lieutenant, there was a black plague crossing Europe for the second time. Oh. Reasonable. I know what you're going to say, Artudo, but I meant it quasi-literally. A couple of girls have been stranded in the wilderness and they're both technically princesses. Hence, damsels. You know that Mom knows what you meant, right? And a couple of princes are there, too. And a goat. And the hunters, wait. Naruto furrowed his brows. Did Mom just call you for a ride? For demigods? Isn't that against the rules? More of a divine drive-by. Sadly without any bodies left in the wake. Ares clicked his tongue. A shame. Not my kids, so don't sweat it, kiddo. We're just helping some family get home. That makes Hestia happy, so Pops won't pay it no mind. Much. Apollo pursed his lips, then added under his breath. I hope. Yes, Zeus, it makes Hestia happy when we help each other's children. Poseidon smirked at his younger brother. Hades chuckled in his seat while the king seethed. It goes against the ancient laws. I allowed it because I didn't know it was Hades' spawn that would be brought back. Zeus growled. Lucky me. Nico deadpanned. I can't tell you how much I regret that stupid prayer. You were bullied in school, weren't you? I knew I should have personally babysat you more often. The fun we could have had, the single parents I could have met, well. You know what they say, foresight is 50-50, hindsight is 20-20. I don't think anyone says that. They don't, yet. The certainty in which your other self says that is terrifying. Hermes drawled. Yeah, but it all really starts to go to hell in November of 2019. Apollo waved at the god. Don't worry, we've got time. Naruto started to massage his temples. Since we're being diverted from Guy's night, which will be rectified on another day, Apollo grinned at his nephew's groan. Want me to tell you about the little children we're picking up? You're going to anyway. The blonde leaned his elbow on the door and propped his cheek up by his fist, staring out the window in disinterest. Yeah, I am. So you know Poseidon has a kid, right? Paul, Jefferson? Talia stopped and reread the name. Then she started to snicker before guffawing outright. Nico, Leo, and Frank started to laugh. Ares, Hermes, and Apollo were doing the same. Piper, Hazel and Annabeth giggled. Jason chuckled and shook his head. Percy slumped down in his seat, arms crossed and a pout on his face. Behind him, his father had a brooding frown in place. Dionysus took a sip from his Diet Coke and eyed the amused mortals. I don't see what's so funny. He looked at the other amused gods. It is his name after all. My son's name is Percy, Dionysus, Poseidon mumbled. That's what she said. Dionysus took another sip of his Coke. Holly Jefferson. Poseidon, you know how Dionysus is. Don't let his ways goad you, Hestia said to her brother, who had leveled the god of wine with a glare. Poseidon huffed, sat back, and waited for the demigods to calm down. Not even close, geez. What, do the hunters not gossip? Naruto leveled his uncle with a flat stare. Last I checked, Mom's pastimes do not include gathering at the Olympian water cooler to chat about the office. Kudos for the cultural references, but points deducted for the attitude. She didn't mention anything, huh? The sun god rolled his eyes. My sister is such a killjoy. I swear. Anyway, about Poseidon's kid? Right. His name is Percy Jackson. Ring any bells now? The blank stare remained. Come on, the whole lightning thief incident? Retrieving the golden fleece? The kid's trying to set a record, I swear. What part of my training in Canada explanation did you miss? A. Watch the cheek or I'll smack it. Wham, pow. Straight to the moon, Alice. Oh, not that deplorable show. Hera scrunched her nose, clearly disgusted. It was very similar to the look on Artemis' face. Truly, a period of time that did not age well. Hestia nodded her assent. Deplorable? It was a classic. Next you'll say I Love Lucy wasn't supporting feminism. Apollo huffed. Why do you keep saying things I don't understand? What about a lightning thief? Why was there a need to retrieve the golden fleece? Wait, does he not know? Percy asked. I thought he was informed by Khonsu about things that happened? Annabeth asked, looking at her mother. Rumors of the theft hardly reached the ears of the minor gods, Annabeth, Athena said. We made sure to keep it far from the ears of other pantheons. Apollo just kept his eyes on the sky, shoulders slumped. Cracks jokes about modern office life, but doesn't know the honeymooners? Naruto rolled his eyes and looked back out the window. He did a double take when he saw a large snow-covered clearing start to get closer. Uncle Fred? We are marathoning good TV, and I don't care what Hera or Hestia say about the show. It's a staple of American history. Apollo started to rant. The ground was getting closer. There was a large crowd of people near the clearing. Uncle Fred? Television is culture. It's history. Memes, it'll be a thing, you just wait for that one. Oh, right. Demig, wait. No, you will be able to enjoy them. Awesome. We should make the first one. It'll be a good time. Uncle Fred. What? Is the sun supposed to be this close to the ground? Oh, F. And this is why we have you renew your license every few years, Zeus sighed. Hopefully it wasn't farmland. We all remember when that last happened. A bird flew into my face. And California ignited as a result. Don't forget the time he set the Cuyahoga River on fire. Poseidon deadpanned. That was not my fault. Apollo crossed his arms. The mortals were throwing all sorts of things into that water. I barely grazed the surface. You were indulging the trend of the time. Hades grumbled. You were at fault. Thank us we got him off of acid. Hermes rubbed his head. I swear, if I don't hear another hippie song, it'll be too soon. Faster than Naruto could perceive, Apollo pulled back on the steering wheel and pressed down on a button on the dash. A bright flash blinded the mortal riding shotgun, before he was reminded that G-forces were a thing and was jostled by the immediate halt. Naruto's stomach lurched up to his throat and dropped back down. His nails were embedded in the leather interior and his eyes were the size of dinner plates, staring blankly at the bright glow that came through the windshield. He looked at his uncle, who had both a blinding grin and sunglasses on his face. Nailed it. I am never riding in this thing again. Sure, whatever helps you sleep at night. Apollo waved him off and unbuckled his seat belt. He opened the door and stepped out, raising a hand up to someone outside. Hey, lil sis, we made it. And all heck broke loose, Jason chuckled. Talia eyeballed him before she huffed. Not yet. Being in the forests of Maine during the peak of winter was not the idea of fun for one Talia Grace. Sure, the snow was plentiful and fluffy, and the scenery she would reflect was beautiful, but the area was tainted by loss, anger, and them. Good. Let the hate flow through you. Use it. Join us. Leo drummed his fingers together and let out a mad cackle. Shut it, elf boy, or I'm shoving my steel toe boot up where it doesn't shine. Talia snarled threateningly. What? A Star Wars reference was begging to be used. Like a low-hanging fruit. Anger coiled through her veins, and static danced at her fingertips, a normal occurrence for when her emotions were out of whack. Talia took a deep breath in an effort to calm down and pulled her jacket tighter. She felt like a caged animal, restless and in need of something to do. Annabeth was missing, possibly gone for good. Percy was acting like a puss about it. Grover was distracted by his new charge who was, in the daughter of Zeus' modest opinion, way too excited about everything. Oh, and to top it all off, the hunters were here. It was a picture-perfect shit day, snowfall included. The language of your narrative says a lot about your mindset. Annabeth hummed. You just got kidnapped by the Manticore. Talia deadpanned. A glower crossed Percy's face and Annabeth flushed at the reminder. Yes, but I knew you guys would come get me. It was so romantic, Aphrodite sighed. Then glared at the huntress. Then the poop sniffer had to muck it all up. Yes, how dare I take the place of Atlas for the life of Annabeth Chase and one of my hunters. Artemis drawled, a bored look on her face at Aphrodite's insult. Truly, a crime against Olympus if ever there was one. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. They were waiting for transport back to Camp Half-Blood, which was good. Unfortunately, her choice in company was lacking. So we're waiting for Apollo? The sun guy? The little runt of a demigod asked. Nico D'Angelo. Only half of the demigods they were supposed to escort back to camp. Good, great. First she insults me and then she reminds me about Bianca. Nico drawled. Thanks for that, Thunderhead. Anytime, Death Breath. That little quest turned out about as well as the rest of the night, that was for sure. Closing her army jacket around her tighter, the raven-haired teen blew some of her hair out of her eyes. Yeah. Lord Apollo's a pretty awesome god. Grover, her satyr friend, told the runt. Cool. Wouldn't it be hot? Percy asked the kid, who scrunched his face in concentration at the question. I guess that makes more sense. Talia closed her eyes. She would not mock Percy for being an idiot. Be proud of my restraint. Talia smirked at her cousin, who rolled his eyes. It was a Herculean feat to be sure, Annabeth teased. Well, if it's you. I'm fine with it. Percy shrugged. He was just trying to keep Nico distracted, and away from the hunters. Electric blue eyes glanced at the silver-clad troop, then narrowed when they met with the dark browns of the hunt's lieutenant. The last time she'd met the hunters, they'd saved her friends from being overwhelmed by hellhounds, save for one. The mortal that had befriended Luke, Annabeth and herself had not been seen since that night. According to Annabeth, when Luke was given his quest to steal one of Hera's apples, he'd made time to seek out Whiskers. She adamantly refused to call him something as ridiculous as Naruto. Even your narrative uses your pet name for him. Hate you, McLean. I hate you so much. The apartment they'd stayed in was demolished a year after he disappeared, and there'd been no rumors of a Marvel fan taking his cosplay to the next level. Talia told Annabeth what Artemis had revealed to her shortly afterwards. Whiskers was the goddess' son. They made an agreement to find him and rescue Luke together, but now. Hermes brat took the big swan dive off the Empire State Building after stabbing himself. So good luck getting that to happen, Ares chuckled darkly, ignoring the glare he got from the god of thieves. Finally. Here he comes now, Artemis said, still looking like a child as she used her pale hand to shield her eyes. Talia looked up, grateful for the distraction, and found what looked like a star that was coming towards them. Rapidly. Hey, is it me or is that star getting bigger? She asked. That pompous. Everyone down, Artemis cried out as a massive ball of light rushed towards them. The hunters listened to her command, while Talia tackled Grover and Percy pulled Nico down. The daughter of Zeus grimaced when she got a bleat to the face from her goat-bodied friend as a hot flash shot over them, scorching the area. Ugh, gross. She grumbled as she stood up. That was some serious stank. She covered her nose and took a step away from the satyr. Grover, you need to cut back on the onions in your enchiladas. I feel that. Percy nodded. He shook his head. G-Man gets the worst gas from onions. Regardless of where it comes from. Too much information, Percy. Talia shuddered. Sorry, Talia. Just, at least brush your teeth more often. Talia grumbled. She couldn't stay mad at Grover. The reason she got a cheesy bleat to the face, however. I can't believe, of all the irresponsible, inconsiderate Apollo. Artemis sounded livid as she switched to her adult form. Talia stepped out of the irate goddess way, and tracked her to her target. The smoking golden hot rod that nearly reduced them to ash was still dimming when the driver's side door popped open. Stepping out was a young guy that looked like he just walked out of a Californian advertisement for a surf shop. Despite the distance, and slight glare from the car, Talia could make out the features of the youth's face. She gulped. Whoa, Apollo's hot. Why, thank you. This book does not represent the opinions of Talia Grace or the hunters. Talia drawled, getting a snickers of amusement from the other demigods. You already said it, too late for you to add a disclaimer now. Well, duh, Percy said, stepping up beside her. He is the sun god. She leveled him with a flat stare and crossed her arms. That's not what I meant. And the compliments keep coming. I feel the power of the love. Apollo beamed with pride. You're welcome, Aphrodite tittered. Don't encourage him. Artemis, Athena, Ares, Hermes, Hades, Hera, Poseidon and Zeus drawled. That's a frightening amount of us agreeing on something. Dionysus mused before he took another sip of his soda. Hestia merely shook her head, a small smile on her face. Hey, lil sis, we made it. Why in the world do the gods let you drive this thing? Another voice spoke up once the passenger door popped open. A voice Talia swore she could recognize from somewhere. A blonde teen with a white shirt stood and slammed the door shut. I was just asking myself the same question, Artemis said. Hey, watch the ride, Apollo snapped, glaring at his accomplice. He shifted a bright grin back on his face when he looked at his sister. He held his arms out. Lil sis, I can explain, save it. The goddess looked at the teen that was glaring at her twin's head. Her features softened slightly, but hardened when she looked back at Apollo. At least I'm not the only one who thinks you need to be reevaluated. What? I'm the best driver on Olympus. The sun god boasted. Meh. Are you challenging me? Apollo eyeballed Hermes. The god of travelers smirked. Well, now I never said anything, but if you want to put some drachmas on it. There will be no races involving the sun chariot. Zeus drawled. Aw. Buzzkill. Artemis, the hunters, sans Bianca, and the other blonde unanimously scoffed. Artemis poked her twin in the chest. We will be having a long conversation about this. About what? I'm a fantastic driver with the coolest car. I would sooner trust your stupid car to drive itself than I do with you. You take that back, Apollo gasped and turned to hug and drool over his car. It's okay, baby, she didn't mean it. She's just ignorant. Shh, shh. Daddy's here. I foresee an apology for TCM later. No. Artemis deadpanned. I have proclaimed it to be, so be it shall. Apollo slammed his fist on the arm of his throne. We're standing right here. The teen crossed his arms. I care not, you traitor. Apollo growled at the other blonde. Ichor or blood, your sucking up has stained our relationship. That is not even a thing. The teen threw his arms up before he looked at Artemis. Right? Do not encourage him. He will continue if you engage. She reached out and started to respectfully check him for injuries. Talia arched a brow. That's way different than how she treated Grover, who let out an indignant bleat at the sight, and Percy. Are you hurt? I'm fine, Lady Artemis. Her silver eyes snapped to his, the stare pointed and he ducked his head. No, Mom. Talia felt her throat tighten because what in Hades had Whiskers been doing while she was a freaking pine tree? When'd he get so tall? And where did he get that really tight t-shirt? Now her eyes were wandering, drinking in the view. Stupid hormones. There is hope in this world after all. Aphrodite smiled. Weren't you listening, Aphrodite? That was due to the hormones. Artemis huffed. The Lady of Doves laughed. Of course it was, Artemis. Of course. Of course, she said coyly to the Eternal Maiden. It dimmed down once the huntress looked away, but Aphrodite kept staring intently at the goddess. Of course. Wait, what? Percy muttered next to her, drawing her out of her thoughts. I thought Artemis was the whole, Oh, for the love of. Virgin, Talia said, smirking at her cousin when his cheeks darkened. It's pronounced Virgin, wethead. Shut up, pinecone face. If there weren't two gods right there, she would have decked the little shit. Her attention went back to the goddess and her son. If you're sure. I'm sure, Mom. I'm fine. A small smile graced the teen's face and Talia felt her chest tighten. Oh, gods, what was wrong with her? That's good. Now on to other business. Artemis reached up, applied what looked like enough torque to turn a truck and wrenched her twin's ear. Hey! Hands off the merchandise, Apollo gasped in shock. Nay. Artemis' lips quirked up. Twist harder. Ow. Ow. Artemis. What in the world were you thinking? Artemis' eyes were glowing. If I hadn't been there to protect them, my hunters and the demigods would have been roasted to ashes. Talia pursed her lips. Great. That marks 3 times she owes Artemis. Her eyes glanced to the hunters and met Zoe's once more. The lieutenant smirked and she huffed before looking away, back at Whiskers. He seemed amused by the fight occurring before him. Lucky little punk gets a front row seat. Ares grumbled. I would kill to watch the twins duke it out. Would have been just like Troy. That's not my fault. Apollo winced as he jerked away and rubbed the side of his head. Really? Artemis arched a brow as her glowing eyes dimmed. Do tell, how is it not your fault that you can't keep your eyes on the skyway? Apollo did what many before him had done, Talia was not excluding herself from that, and pointed his finger at the other blonde. He was distracting me. If eyes could actually pop out of sockets, Talia was sure that Whiskers would probably circle the globe. That's. I didn't even. He's lying. God of truth. Apollo smirked at him. He looked at his twin and nodded. That little traitor has the gall to go see the Phantom Menace with Frey Yank. Frank of all people. Ouch. Frank frowned. He was talking about Frey, Fra, the Norse summer. Hermes bit out before shaking his head. Ugh, hate saying Norse names. So weird and Germanic. Nice save. Totally covered himself there. A hunter murmured, before being elbowed in the side. Talia glanced at the group, noted the smirks on their faces, and frowned. Why did she get the feeling that they knew what the twin gods were talking about? Did you know there were other deities? Jason asked, looking at his sister. The other demigods followed suit. Maybe. Talia huffed. Actually, before these stories came into her life, no, she hadn't known about other pantheons existing in the realm of mortals. She would never share that information, though. And then he has the gall to come back with some mind you, knowledge of modern culture. This distracted you, how? Artemis asked. Her twin smirked and put a hand on his chest. Being the intelligent god that I am, I did my best to bestow all my culturally savvy knowledge on his young mortal mind. Apollo sighed and shrugged his shoulders. Sadly, he just wouldn't listen to fact and reason. You were talking about spousal abuse being iconic and a cornerstone of American history. Whiskers threw his arms up. Was it just Talia, or did the temperature just drop by another 10 degrees? You nearly roasted my hunters because of your stupid fascination with that Hermes Spawns damn sitcom? Artemis snapped. Apollo crossed his arms and met his sister's glare with one of his own. The honeymooners is a staple to American culture. That kids don't know of it today would be like saying they don't know who the Lone Ranger is. Who? Percy, ever the master of timing that he was, chose that moment to voice his ignorance. It's a gift. Percy drawled, unenthused by the blunt accuracy of the statement. The other demigods were of other minds, giggling at the thought. Unlike Talia, who wisely kept her mouth shut. She would be asking someone about it later, though. It was an old Western show, Grover mumbled. Well, that answers that. Apollo and Artemis looked at the gathered group before looking back at each other. This isn't over. The goddess grumbled. She pinched the bridge of her nose. I called in a favor, and time is of the essence. So, now that you are here, you will take both those half-bloods and my hunters to camp. Whiskers held a finger up. Problem. What now? Artemis asked. I can't go to camp. Oh, yeah. He's right. Apollo nodded. Not only is he mortal, but Pops might take offense to him being there. He is a probationary hunter. He goes where the hunt goes. There was a lot of unsatisfied grumbling from the hunters. Since when is that a thing? Apollo asked, eyes wide. I was going to bring his membership up at the solstice meeting. I could just go back to Canada. Canada? Talia furrowed her brow. Why was he in Canada? No. The twins leveled him with a pointed look and he held his hands up. There is nothing wrong with Canada. I take offense to this. Frank grunted and scowled. You'd rather be a Canadian idiot? Apollo asked, grinning. The grin left his face when Artemis snagged his ear. Hey, ow. Do not attempt to turn this venture into a concert. His twin warned. Or I will make it very difficult for you to have further demigods for the next few decades. How would you? Melissa has become quite familiar with the workings of the Facebook. Isn't that the tech nut? Apollo furrowed his brow before his eyes widened. You wouldn't dare. Oh, I would. Artemis gave him a toothy smile, not unlike that of a predator. One word and your status goes from single to in a relationship with a woman in the old folks' home. Fine, fine. Don't be so hasty about these things. Apollo conceded to his twin's demands, making a mental note to change his login and password. Again. Joke. It was just a joke. You will go with the hunters and play with Chiron's wards. Go, Apollo. What is the word I'm looking for? To show superiority in the games of youths? You want him to go flex? Apollo cocked a brow. Yes. That. Artemis nodded, looking pleased. She smiled at Whiskers. Go flex on the demigods. Yeah, sure. Okay. Whiskers looked like he was trying to hide a smile. Sportingly and wreck their dreams? Make sure Hypnos has nothing to work with. Artemis nodded again. The fuck? Percy whispered and looked at Artemis in horror. She needs her ego stroked, Talia whispered to him. Annabeth rubbed her boyfriend's arm before looking at Artemis. Lieutenant. You do realize that you'll be playing against him, too, right? Well, yeah. Talia blinked and then grinned savagely. I would relish the challenge. That's not all she gets out of it. Leo muttered. Piper gave him a sharp elbow in the side. Ow. Girl, watch your elbow shots. We talked about this. A mortal after my own golden heart. Apollo sniffed. He wiped his crocodile tear away and planted his fists on his hips. Very well, lil sis. I, the great Apollo, shall do this favor to you, and watch as my only lil nephew trounces my kids and their ilk. Recalling the fights where the blonde mortal stood his own against countless monsters, a tingle went up Talia's spine. Whiskers was going to be with the hunters. They didn't seem pleased about it, and that might even throw them off of their game. She has a chance to rub their face in defeat, to prove them and their smug lieutenant wrong. Anyone else get a chill down their spine? Percy mumbled. No, just me? Cool. Great. PFFT, man up, Jackson. Still kicked your butt. It was a paper cut. At best. Ares seethed. But not everyone will fit on my ride as it is. Apollo's voice broke through their thoughts again. He snapped his fingers. I've got it. We'll forego style this time, and ride something culturally appropriate. If only to instill something in my foolish nephew's head. You are the only fool here. Artemis grumbled. Whiskers looked wide-eyed when the god lifted his keys, and turned to look at them. All those currently without godly status should cover their eyes. A bright flash and the chirp of a lock later, and the god's sports car was reverted to a large golden school bus. In place of a number was the phrase Wahoo! And the headlights were styled to look like eyes. Nice one, other me. Nice one. Apollo grinned. Talia did all she could not to think about happier times when she was younger, before that woman did the unforgivable thing. Oh, how foreboding. What could have possibly happened? Nico rolled his eyes. A 2-year-old Jason was left alone in the ruins of a cabin in the woods of California, Talia said flatly. Oh. Nico winced. Sorry. Whatever. The daughter of Zeus turned the page. All right, field trip everyone. Form up a line, ladies and gents. Apollo clapped his hands. Oh, and goats. Talia hung back, not wanting to sit anywhere near the front or risk being crammed next to a window. Doing so allowed her to witness the interaction of a goddess and mortal. You want us to ride with this whiz? Oh, man. Whiskers asked the goddess beside him. She sighed. It's the fastest ride I know of, sadly. Artemis smiled at him. Be safe. You too. The blonde chanced a glance at the hunters and, before she could stop him, wrapped his arms around her. I love you, Mom. I know this is a test. It has to be. The goddess of the hunt froze. Her finger twitched, before she awkwardly patted Whiskers' back, which prompted him to let go. Talia winced, recalling the time when she and the blonde were the only two awake, before she knew what he was. Artemis turned to her brother when she noticed him helping a hunter get her bag. Need a hand, sweetheart? Do not call my hunter sweetheart, Apollo. I am trying to be helpful, but you're just being hurtful. Does the sibling gag ever get old? Hazel had to wonder. Of course not. Banter is what keeps us from tearing each other apart at times, Apollo said with a smile. That's great. So, to make you all fight I have to do something about out-of-battle banter, huh? Ares rubbed his chin and then nodded. Challenge accepted. Rolling her eyes at the sibling banter, Talia looked to Whiskers again, only to find him climbing into the bus. She was the last to board after him. He sat behind the driver's seat, next to the lieutenant. She saw a prime opportunity when she realized that the seat across from the one he took was free, save for her cousin. With Percy at the window, Talia popped down beside him and stared at the whiskered blonde, thinking about what she was going to say. Provoking conversation after watching him for so long was going to be awkward, but she needed to know why he left. Then she noticed the tattoo on his left arm. When did you get a tattoo? She really hoped that he didn't notice the envy in her voice. I don't allow tattoos, Talia. Artemis tutted at her second in command. It's in the pamphlet. Yes, Lady Artemis, I know. Talia muttered, frowning. Then hummed and looked back at her matron goddess. What about protective runes? Well, let me consider no. Artemis frowned. Keep reading. Hoover, damn it. Percy snickered. You've got to grow up and be a big girl to get tattoos. Nico smirked. Sparking blue eyes glared at him. Go get bent over by your boyfriend, death breath. Thanks, Talia, I really wanted that image in my head. Hazel groaned while Nico's face took on a redder hue. Look, I don't want to talk about his eyes met hers and his mouth dropped. Talia? Yes. She grumbled, was it really well, okay she had been a tree for the last 5 years. That was a problem. Wow. I didn't. How have you been? I was a tree. In limbo. Look, it doesn't matter. She waved her hand, frustration written on her face before she leveled a hard glare at him. Where were you? He blanched and his right hand rubbed at his arm, stroking the intricate design. What did it feel like, she wondered. Then promptly assured herself that she meant she wanted to know what he was feeling. Soon. Soon. Aphrodite smiled. Thou need not answer her, Naruto. Zoe, mistress of inserting her opinion when it wasn't needed, said beside him. She put a hand on his shoulder and glared at Talia, who matched it with a volatile glower of her own. Thank you, Zoe, But it isn't a problem. Whisker's voice was subdued and soft. Zoe gave him a curious glance and he waved her off. Then he turned in his seat, putting his legs in the aisle to meet her face to face. Talia, I've waited 7 years to say this, I'm sorry. Wah, 7 years, I was only a tree for 5. Yeah, where I've been. Naruto rubbed his neck with his left hand and gave her a sheepish smile. It's kind of complicated like that. Being whisked around by a god of time sounds like it might be. Reina shook her head. It was hard to comprehend that was what he had been doing, but being a demigod made it easier to deal with. If he got to ride in a TARDIS before I did, I'm going to be very cross, Apollo said with a glower. Time is really irrelevant. Apollo called from the front as he stepped onto the bus, efficiently butting in on the conversation. Talia felt she was long overdue. Except for the here and now. Head count, hunters. Dead silence. The glares were nearly audible. Okay. I'll take that as you're all present. The god's chipper attitude was mildly infuriating. Talia leveled him with a glare, too. Not because of his sex, but because of his crap timing. She was in the middle of something. Campers? Let's see, cabin 3? Here, Percy said beside her. Cabin 11? There was a soft "that's you" from Grover before Nico went, here. And I see the noteworthy horns of a satyr, which leaves cabin 1. Apollo's eyes locked with Talia's and his grin widened. Hello, Talia Grace. Welcome back. Thanks. She huffed. You're the daughter of Zeus, right? Big man on top? The pretty girl who was a pretty tree? Percy snorted and Talia glared at him, before looking at the god once more. Yeah, and? Cool. Cool. Apollo sniffed and leaned against the dash before he nodded at the driver's seat. Wanna drive? This couldn't possibly go wrong. Famous last words. Percy groaned, rubbing his face. I remember how well that ended. The book was thrown into his chest. He doubled over and coughed, before glaring at the perpetrator when it reappeared on her lap. Oops, sorry. Fingers slipped. Talia deadpanned, not even trying to conceal her guilt. She flopped back on the couch and crossed her arms while she glared at the reading material. Stupid book.